Welcome to WebRTC Live. In WebRTC Live, we cover the latest technical topics and business use cases for WebRTC and live video. As always, this episode is brought to you by WebRTC.Ventures, leading integrators of WebRTC video into your custom application.
Welcome back to WebRTC Live. I'm your host, Arin Sime, founder and CEO of WebRTC.Ventures. We're a custom design and development firm specializing in live video applications, and we're here to take your video application live. You can learn more about us at WebRTC.Ventures. For today's episode, I'm very pleased to have Varun Singh as my guest. Varun is founder and CEO of Callstats.io and a thought leader in the WebRTC space around call performance. He'll be speaking at the Illinois Institute of Tech Real-Time Communications Conference in Chicago this October on call center performance. So welcome, Varun. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Aaron. Glad to have to come on. Always a pleasure speaking with you. So I'm really happy that we're doing this.
Yeah, definitely. I appreciate you taking the time. And we're actually speaking with you today. You're at an Airbnb in San Francisco. So we're going to do some real-time call performance metrics here, perhaps unintentionally, depending on the strength of the connection at your Airbnb.
Yeah, that is. It's always fascinating that I actually land up in these places and get frustrated the most. I think I give all my Airbnb hosts like a lot of feedback on like why their network needs to be improved or what they could do better.
Right.
I don't know, but I never land up in the same place again. So it's like just community service at this point, like telling everyone like how to improve it, and then nothing. Like, do not reap the benefits if they actually do something about it.
Well, you are making the world a better place with video call performance. It's a good segue to what Callstats does.
Exactly.
So why don't we start there? Tell us a little bit about Callstats.
Yeah, so Callstats, we are like real-time analytics and tech platform. We started in 2014. We were bootstrapped for a bit. We raised some money in 2016 and 15 from venture capital. So we've been around the block for a few years. And as Aaron, you said, that we've been thought leaders in the space, and that's mainly because of the work that I and my co-founders and the core team has done over the last 10 years in measuring performance of networks, the performance of calls, quality of calls. We've been I think we're all networking geeks, or for a lack of a better word. And the team itself has quite large knowledge base to draw themselves from. So like there's people who know TCP very well, who measure TCP performance in mobile networks, people who build mobile networks, people who've done video, people who measured video. Martin, who joined us about a year and a half ago, has been doing QoE for a while. Leonard has been leading our AI team, mainly performance in the past. So like a lot of people to like rely on and build this product that we've been doing for 5-6 years now.
Yeah, I mean, WebRTC has come a long ways, and the quality of WebRTC calls in general has certainly come a long ways, but we're not all on 5G connections or fiber connections yet, for sure. So, and even once we are, call quality will still be an important topic. So it's a good space that you're in, definitely. So when you join us in Chicago in a few weeks, you'll be talking about quality in call centers. Can you give us a little bit of a preview of your talk and what you'll be talking about?
Yeah, definitely. Like you brought up a good point, like networks are improving all the time. But if you think about like codecs and networks improve, but the the problems or the tension remains the same. So if you talk to a person in 1990s, they said, we're on a DSL connection, and the technology is like changed 5 times over since then. We got the mobile networks working, the wireless networks working. But call quality, just because what we want to do with those networks when they improve also changes, right? So number of people doing video calls and audio calls today are much larger than they were before. I remember a statistic from 5 years ago, like I think Facebook Messenger was carrying like more audio and video minutes than all the providers put together. Was the largest provider in the world, which is significant if you think about like where we are in terms of monopoly shifting from fixed line providers providing you communication services to like over the top.
Right.
So like going back to my talk on call centers, the reason I picked call centers is because the world's changing, and when we built Callstats, it has the word call in it. So like we picked appropriately, and initially we did a lot of conferencing style applications, right? So there was team collaboration, healthcare, education, like things like webinars, because these were the people who moved very early to disrupt the use of audio and video in these new spaces which had not yet been explored. And call centers have been around for what, 30, 50, like 50 years. And especially like offshoring has been happening for more than 30 years, like since the late 90s. But what we've noticed in the last few years, and we kind of expected this to happen before, but it's good that's eventually happening, is move of the call centers to the cloud. So let me just share a few slides so that you can follow along, and that would help set the stage to understand why this is such a big problem, or why is it an interesting space to be in, right? So this is the slide that I just spoke to, but skip through. So contact centers are a big market, and if I'm going by several market analysts, Gartner, Forrester, the earning calls from like Ring Central by its the market cloud-based call centers, the market, or the call centers, not just cloud-based, is about 20 to 24 billion today, right? And the speculation is about 15% of this market is about cloud-based. And a few years ago, this was a very small number. So in the last few years, this is ramped up. And this is mainly because the folks have been doing a good job of promoting it. Like a lot of companies have come up in the last 10, 15 years, which have been pushing, and now you can see that change happen. And what we're seeing is that in the next, if we fast forward and looking at the analyst figures, like this 15% becomes like 30%, 40% in the next 3-4 years. And basically, while the market is growing, it's actually eating the on-premise is lunch, for the lack of a better word. So basically the 3 billion market, which is today cloud-based, out of the 24 will become like 10 billion out of 30, right? And that's a step in the right direction, and be accelerated more given that more cloud-based contact centers are emerging. So and that emergence is actually disrupting the market quite significantly. So on the on-premise side, you have the Cisco's, Genesys, and Avaya. They're still there. They're doing their job. The CCaaSs are like Amazon Connect, Twilio Flex, Five9, Talkdesk, 8x8 RingCentral. There's a whole big numbers. These are the ones that we think are interesting. So with this tension in the market and like movement towards the right side, towards the cloud, it's actually an interesting point that I think we're at a tipping point already today, or have been the last few months. So the next few years are going to be very exciting for the cloud-based contact centers. But the shift is going to leave some gaps in the industry, because an industry which has been on-prem for the last 30 years, when they move to the cloud, there's a new area of tools that would be needed. Some of them are the old tools, and some of them are new tools re-envisioned for this new world. But mainly the tension is that people are moving to the cloud-based contact centers because they can move faster, it's more convenient, it's easy to build out, scale, and so on and so forth. But all those advantages come with the fact that you lose control, because when you were on-prem, you had full control over everything. You had basically, if we talk about call centers, they're brick and mortar spaces. You have incoming lines from the service provider into the basement, and then you have a PBX or something similar, which goes and runs the lines to each desk in the call center. So you have system admins, you have operational folks which understand the space very well, and they build this out for you. Now with the PBX moving to the cloud means that you now are relying on public internet to get your calls from the cloud to you. And the other thing is that a lot of this cloud-based contact centers, because of the move to that, the call centers themselves realize that there's very little need to run these as a brick and mortar, so people can work from home, work from coffee shops, and this brings a whole new challenge, right? So like people will work from Airbnbs, they'll travel, and suddenly like that whole control that the operational folks had is lost. And that's where Callstats seems to be like looking very closely on the problems that these folks will be facing. So why Callstats? We want to rapidly detect problems, identify root cause issues, and especially like when we were selling to like webinars and healthcare products and and team collaboration, we had like developers who understood real-time communication more than like folks who are going to use these CPaaSs. So a lot of the things that we are trying to do now are like, how do we make this insights or this data more actionable and more easy to comprehend, so that even the agents themselves would be able to like figure out what's wrong, right? Like how do we give agents superpowers so that they do not need to escalate the problem to like a system administrator, especially if you're sitting in like an Airbnb like here, and you're getting calls and you're doing calls today from here and tomorrow from somewhere else. Like how do you make sure that you're able to do that? And so I'll skip through this. What we're noticing is that there's an emergent need. How was it before the call? How was it during the call? Opinion at the end of the call? Did it affect anyone else in this location? So if it was indeed a small brick and mortar place where 20, 30 people come and work from, that would be like that. Like, is it just this person or is it more? And then lastly, can it happen again? Right. So these are the areas that we are actively exploring. And you can see like a bunch of things that we're doing on the right side. So we do passive call monitoring. This is something that we've been doing for 6 years. Active monitoring, which is like running tests in the background when the call is open, but no calls are being made. This we've been doing for 2-3 years. We've taken both those things and started to aggregate it as sites. Sites are places where people may come and work from. And then like, can it happen again? So like some kind of regression testing and like some background tests around that. Let's skip quickly to the quality part because I want to keep this short. So one of the things that was different with team collaboration and healthcare, slightly in healthcare and education, was that end users, if they complain, if they have bad quality, they'll complain. Depending on how much they will pay for that experience, like if it's a free, then they will complain in a different way. If they're paying for that for that consultation with the doctor, and they have a bad experience, they're probably going to say something like, hey, I don't want to pay for it, whereas the doctor would say like, I want to get paid. So call centers are similar. Like the agents are part of your ecosystem. They're employees or employees or contractual employees, and if they have bad experience, then they're less productive. So, and what we've already typed this into is taking the quality scores in measuring productivity as individuals, right? So if someone says that I'm going to do like 20 hours of calls this week, I'm going to do an outbound sales call, I'm going to make these 40 calls in a row, and I want like good experience. And if they run into issues, then they're less productive, right? And we are measuring these things. We are working with integrations from workforce optimization tools, workforce management tools, get all that information on like what their expectations are, what are they doing, collate all this information and expose it to like supervisors, operators of the call center, so that they can make better decisions. And productivity is like really important because like on one hand, the agent is underproductive, means that they may get paid less or they may not enjoy working and they may churn. That's one aspect, right? So like if you have 40 agents and they're supposed to like take calls all day, if 20 of them are being unproductive, like your call wait times are going to increase. So end users are going to be a little more dissatisfied because suddenly, and the operations team would be really frustrated because they do have like the manpower to like support it, but they're still seeing like the increase in wait times, right? So this is like a full story around productivity of the agent, like quality scores for the end user, where you don't want to make them wait too much, and figuring out how we can optimize this. I can get more into it. I think I'll leave it at this, and we can then talk about, like, I'll open this floor because I think there are a lot of areas that we can talk about. So I'll do that, and then we can use the slides if I have some slides to talk through.
Okay, great. Yeah, I like the way that you're tying that quality into the business results, and churn of call center agents, definitely a big concern, and obviously the impact that it has on the customers themselves. So I think that's really important, the way that you tie that together. When you talk about quality in a call, obviously there are some binary metrics we could use. Was someone able to connect or not? Did the call drop? That sort of thing. But then there's this whole sort of gray area in between where you're in the conversation, but maybe the call's not going great for some reason. And so you all have some quality metrics around that, EMOS. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you measure that sort of gray area in between connected and disconnected?
Right. So like, I think for us, the main thing with any measurement and quality is like the call quality, like if you're talking about the experience itself, starts when the call is connecting, and then all that. So and one of the things that we changed in the last half a year is the way we represent it. So of course, like quality right now, in the past used to be measured in at every instance of time, taking some localization around that period of time, like a few seconds before. Now what we've done is basically we've done this as a sliding window. So basically the call toward like the end of the call has more impact on your score than like the beginning of the call. If you had a short call, that then that kind of coalesces together, and then that's the score of the call. The end of the call is the beginning of the call, hence the experience of the call. So if your call ends really quickly and that was unanticipated, you get the same results as before. But it was trying to cover the fact that if you have a 15-minute call and it may not be very great, but you can hear each other and you can converse and you can get stuff done. That is different from it's frustrating and you close the call early. So score takes more towards the end of the call, and especially like you had a very good call and at the end of the call, like the last 30 seconds, 1 minute was really terrible, then it kind of covers that fact that the last 5 minutes is what would be considered as the score of the call, right? And I use 5 minutes as just an example, so we're using recency. And in call centers, it's easy because we're just talking about audio. But in terms of in audio and video calls, we take a lot of like timeliness into account, because if you're speaking, you're looking at the video, they should be in sync. They shouldn't be like freezes on one side or the other. So we take a lot of these playback metrics into account, like how smooth is the playback, right? And that may be affected by connectivity, packet loss, and so on and so forth. So let me just skip to another slide while you bring up the next question. Yeah, so just the one of the things that we try to detect as a consequence of this is, take audio video synchronization, network connectivity, and just with audio, because the focus is call centers, is robotic voice, disrupted voice, one-way audio, echo, like take these into account and like impact the score based on how many events, what is the frequency of these events, how important, like when did it happen, and did it happen regularly, right? If it happened once, you'll be penalized lower. The penalty would be lower compared to like if it happens more often.
Yeah, it's interesting. Obviously, a call is not a single point in time. It is a continuum, and there can be variations in the experience throughout that call. So I think that brings us to last question, which is just to talk a little bit about, you have a timeline feature in Callstats that helps people to visualize that continuum of time throughout the call and what happens.
Let me just walk
different events. Yeah.
Yeah, so when we started Callstats, I realized that, even as an engineer, I love graphs, but at some point I want to make decisions quickly, right? And like, how do I figure out which graphs I should be looking at? So we started with this idea that we could have like a timeline, and this would represent like everything of importance. So like this call is just a call center call because that's the use case that we're talking about today. So there's just Alex on the call, and he's making an outbound or an inbound call. We can look at it from here. He's making an outbound call, and And if there were more people on the call, right, for example, in a collaboration app, you would have like Alex, Varun, Arin, and so on and so forth. So the more people would show up, and then you could see like when they are. So like user presence, when I toggle it, this means that the Alex was present for throughout the call. If you would drop off, you would see white areas in between, right? So that's like very quickly, like, the person is present. And you build like muscle memory as you learn more. Like you use the same graphs every day, you learn what's happening. Were there any disruptions on the call? There were no disruptions. Was there any speakers apart from himself? We'll know more from the headsets. We don't know from here because there's just one. We can look at some other metrics. So you can see like what are the connections, what IP addresses were used. You can see if it was UDP. So very quickly, it's a 10 address, it's UDP. And you can also see the phone number that was dialed out. You just want to see if there was one-way audio. You can see what active devices. So we know that Jabra was used. And you can see if there were any media pipeline issues. So no issues. The call was really good. Media disruptions, not. But then we want to know like the speaking stats, like who was speaking when, so like you can see when he was speaking. So this is a detection that comes from some of the audio analysis features that we're building into Callstats, especially for the call center. So you can see like Alex was speaking with this blue, and then when was the contact speaking, right? So you can see like when was the other party speaking. So now you have both this piece, so you can see like how the interaction was. We also have crosstalk. So if I toggle these two, you can see like areas where we were speaking over each other, right? And then there are some areas where we're speaking more like 3-4 seconds over, and some of them were some more often. And you can get a sense of like, there must have been some disruptions because we're speaking over each other in some places.
Right.
And we can also see like if there was some muting problems, or, if the mic position was right, and if they increased or decreased the volume. And you can see if they did that. No, they didn't. That's
great.
So this gives you like anyone, and basically at this point we see product managers, customer success people, basically a lot of non-engineering folks like use this to like quickly understand what's happening, right? And you can train anyone to look at this, and you're not looking at the graphs anymore. So you don't need to know what the thresholds are. You don't know when, you don't need to know when anyone was speaking and was it background. It's all taken care of and emulated here. So, and if you find some issues, you can always report it with help here. So.
Well, that's great, Varun. Thank you.
So that's
running out of time here, but
summary.
Oh, no, appreciate it. I do want to quickly ask one question from one of our live viewers. Pablo asks, how do you combine the MOS scores of multiple tracks?
Oh, that's an interesting. I think that's like the space where we spend the most amount of time. Like when we talk about tracks, there's a lot of things. Like for example, in this call or any call, you may be looking at one video and looking at another audio. Then those are disconnected, and like we take the weights of what is happening. So for in a case of a 2-person call, it's very simple. It's like my audio video is being rendered on the other side, and you like if the audio and video are present for the whole call, then it's like a simple half. Audio score has its own score, the video has its own score. You just combine it. But then like if you have multiple people, then you take what scores apply to what time periods, right? So like if I was on a call with Pablo, Arin, and you, Arin and I, and what I would notice is that like if I was talking for most of it, then and you were watching Arin for most of it, then like your video scores would come from Arin's video, the audio scores would come from me, and there would be the reception stats, like so what Pablo is receiving, right? So that's basically Pablo's score. And then if Arin was doing something else, like he was watching my video and my audio, then it would be me, like then the scores would be different.
Interesting.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. That's great. Yeah, Pablo says yes. Perfect. Thank you, Varun. Really appreciate you joining us today. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
In addition to being able to watch replays of this on Crowdcast, I'll let our viewers know we'll also be posting this episode to WebRTC Ventures and YouTube next week. If you want to keep up with our future events, join our email list at WebRTC Ventures or follow us on Crowdcast. A couple of upcoming episodes to quickly announce. Thursday, October 3rd at noon Eastern, we'll speak with Kyle Bank from Phoenix Real-Time Solutions about trivia and gaming with WebRTC. Halloween edition on Thursday, October 31st. We'll talk with Sahi Levent-Levi about supporting WebRTC applications. And then on Wednesday, November 13th, we'll speak with Dr. Alex from Cosmos Software about real-time AV1. And don't forget, you can still register for the Illinois Institute of Technology's annual Real-Time Communications Conference, where I'll be and where Varun will be, held in Chicago, October 14th to 16th, and an associated TAD Hack and TAD Summit as well. You can learn more at rtc-conference.com. You can register with promo code FFSPKR for $100 off registration. So thanks everyone for joining us today. Thanks again, Varun, and let's make it live.
Thanks for joining us for WebRTC Live. Visit our website at WebRTC.Ventures to learn more about our custom design and development services, and to learn more about upcoming episodes of WebRTC Live.